Shuvits are one of the first tricks you learn on a fingerboard, and while doing a pop shove does the exact same rotation, getting the board in the air is significantly harder than spinning the board along the ground. To clear up any confusion, a pop shove is when the board does a 180 rotation away from you. The naming can be a bit confusing, but a shove and a shuvit are the exact same thing. And a pop shove or a pop shuvit is a shove where you pop your tail on the ground, which causes it to get into the air. But before we learn to get our boards in the air, let's start with the basics. Step number 1, how to shove it. First, you want to place your index finger in the middle of the board and your middle finger on the tail of the board. Some people find it easier to have their middle fingers on the middle of the tail, but personally, I find it's easier to have your middle finger on the edge of the tail that's furthest away from you. Next, you want to use your middle finger to pull the tail of the board towards you, which will cause the board to rotate away from you. A good trick to practice with the shove it is trying to keep your index finger on the board the entire time. The trick here is to not put too much pressure on your index finger so that the board can still rotate, and lifting up your index finger just enough so that the board stays under your fingers the entire time. While your index finger doesn't really do anything when it comes to doing a simple shove it, learning to keep it on the board as the board spins is really going to help us with doing a proper pop shove and keep it flat in the air so that it doesn't flip over. The key with the shove is to be gentle. You don't really need to put in a ton of effort to do a shove it. Once you pull back towards you on the tail and can get the board to spin, all you need to do is put your fingers back on the board and roll away. Step number 2, popping the board. Doing a pop shove is very similar to doing an ollie, so if you haven't already, I recommend you check out my ollie tutorial so you can master the ollie first. But even if you can't ollie, I'm going to cover everything you need to know in this video to do a pop shove. Because the board naturally wants to spin away from you, you don't need to put in a ton of effort into popping the board away from you. If you do, it's going to spin more like a 360 shove, so it's important to focus on popping the tail down like a regular ollie. To get used to popping the board, you want to press directly down on the tail with your middle finger and try to get all 4 wheels in the air like the board is doing half a backflip. When you first try this, the board may go all over the place and be out of control, but the key here is to make the board go straight backwards and land upside down on top of your middle finger. One technique that really helps is to pull the board backwards when you pop. This will force you to quickly pop the board against the ground. Once you get the hang of popping the board, you can practice popping the board into the air so that it lands upside down onto your fingers and then throwing the board forward to get it to spin. I've seen this in a few other tutorials, and this is a great way to get an understanding of how a pop shove feels. Personally, I try to think of it like an ollie, but keeping my fingers in the same position as a shove it. That way, the board will naturally want to spin away from you, and you can focus more on getting a solid pop and getting your board in the air. Step number 3, leveling out the board in the air. With a shove that rotates along the ground, you really don't need to use your index finger because your wheels are on the ground, which help the board stay flat and prevent it from flipping over. But with a pop shove, the board naturally wants to flip over, so we need to use our index finger to prevent that from happening. The most common problem I see people run into when doing this trick is they accidentally do a varial flip. Even moving your index finger off the board for a fraction of a second can be enough time to cause it to flip. So you want to try to keep your index finger on the board the entire time and follow the board with your hand as it pops in the air. This is definitely the hardest part about this trick. I've seen some tutorials say that you want to apply pressure onto your index finger, but whenever I try to do that, it just does a varial flip. I like to think of it as you are popping the board into your index finger and then using your hand to follow the board in the air so that your index finger never leaves the grip tape. I don't really put any pressure on my index finger, and I just focus on keeping it on the grip tape so that the board doesn't flip. Step number 4, consistency. Pop shoves are one of those tricks that like to go all over the place. It took me a long time to be able to land them every try, so here's a few helpful tricks I learned to land them more consistently. If you're finding that your pop shoves are over rotating or spinning more like a 360 shove, try turning your fingers away from you. This is going to slow down the spin a lot and give you more control over the board. When you have your fingers straight on the board or turned towards you, the board naturally wants to spin more and it tends to not stay directly under your fingers. If your pop shoves are flipping over like a varial flip, try not to overcomplicate things and focus on doing a simple ollie, but have your fingers in the pop shove position. That way you're less likely to accidentally flick the board with your index finger, and it will help you keep your board flat in the air. Focusing on just doing an ollie can also help if you're still over rotating the board. That way we're not forcing it to spin, and the way our fingers are positioned will naturally want to make the board spin away from you. You can also try placing your index finger towards the edge of the board that's furthest away from us. If you have your index finger too close towards you, the board will want to flip over. By placing our index finger further away from us, it makes it a lot harder for the board to flip and will help keep the board flat in the air. Pop shoves are not super common in fingerboarding. A lot of people skip learning them properly because they would rather do more complicated tricks like a varial flip or a tray flip, and the regular shove it where it rotates along the ground is looked at like a beginner trick. But for me personally, pop shoves are one of my favorite tricks. And if you want to learn some other easy tricks, check out my previous videos to learn about ollies or basic manuals and grinds. Once you combine those with your pop shoves, you'll be looking like a pro fingerboarder in no time. And let me know in the comments below what trick you want to learn next. Thank you so much for watching, and make sure to subscribe for more tutorials like this.